Seats and pay attention and enjoy.
Good evening, Morai V'Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of the Tuesday night classes. And this should be indeed dedicated to the neshama of Nisan ben Moshe and for Refuah Shlema of Chayal Yelbat Tali. We all know that tomorrow basically is going to be, tomorrow night, the celebration of Lag BaOmer, which is a very peculiar, so to speak, Chag, a very peculiar Yom Tov, and a celebration which does not have really that much of a source in the literature of the Tanaic literature or the Gemara, Mishnah, and even the Midrash. Really, we find it historically. We find the first time in Sefer HaManhig, one of the Rishonim, and then it becomes a very heavy focus on that in the writings of the Achronim and specifically the Mekubalim. And we all know that we don't fast, we don't say Tachanun, and many of the communities, they have different minhagim, different customs when it comes to Lag BaOmer as to how much of the duration of the Avelut and the minhagim, the customs of the mourning that we observe between Pesach and Shavuot are stopped by the day of Lag BaOmer. The Ashkenazim, Achenu Ashkenazim, they stop basically everything on Lag BaOmer. Tomorrow night, they start listening to music, getting haircuts, and getting married, and so on and so forth. Us, the Sfaradim, generally speaking, we are still going to be stringent with getting haircuts and getting married. Nevertheless, we listen to music and so on. Now, what happened on Lag BaOmer? What happened on Lag BaOmer that made it such a wonderful and historic date in the Jewish calendar, which is the 18th of the month, in the Hebrew month, in the Hebrew calendar? Lag BaOmer is a day that we generally associate with the yortzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's passing, which creates more problem than solving it, because the Gemara tells us, "Kashe mitatan shel tzadikim lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu kechurban Beit HaMikdash." The death, the day that a tzaddik is taken away from this world, is difficult in front of Hashem, just like the same amount as the destruction of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. So why indeed are we celebrating Lag BaOmer?
Most of the time they may be doing that.
Now, the second and perhaps the most famous answer to this question is based on a Gemara in Masechet Yevamot on page 62. The Gemara says there, Samach Bed Amud Bed, that Rabbi Akiva was a master of all of the oral law, and he had amassed 24,000 students, 12,000 of pairs of students, 24,000 students, which all of them perished within a very short period of few weeks between Pesach and Aseret. And the way some of us, the earlier Rishonim of the Sfaradim, have the Girsa in the Gemara, have the text in the Gemara, they passed away until Ad Peros Aseret, which the way we translate is about 15 days before Shavuot, which ends up on Lag BaOmer. So therefore, this date of Lag BaOmer basically marks the date that the students of Rabbi Akiva ceased to die. So that we understand, it's a great simcha. The Gemara tells us that after the fact that they died, Haya ha'olam shamem, the whole world, the spiritual world of Torah was desolate and destroyed. You can imagine everything that we have nowadays is based on Rabbi Akiva's 5 students that he took afterwards. Everything we have. The Gemara says, Kulan, the Tosafta, the Mishnah, the Safra, the stem of each one of them is based on Rabbi Akiva. So you could imagine, just do the math, what we would have had if we had 24,000 of those. How many times more Torah would exist in Klal Yisrael, in our nation? So the world was desolate. And now we understand they ceased to die. It's a great simcha.
They were eating, they were drinking.
But there are a few questions in this. First of all, if so, why don't the Sfaradim stop by Lag BaOmer? By us observing it one extra day until the morning after Lamed Dalet of the Omer, we are clearly showing that the Avelut did not end until Lag BaOmer, not Lag BaOmer. Secondly, according to the Ashkenazim, they died up until Shavuot, just the Shabbatot and the Rosh Chodesh in the between, they did not die. So if you add all of those days up, you end up with the same amount of days of Avelut as the Sfaradim. But they actually did not cease to die until right before Shavuot. So now we have again a problem. And perhaps above all of them, a bigger problem is the problem that Rabbi Chizkiah di Silva, the famous Pri Chadash, in his Sefer on Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Taf Tzadi Gimel 493, he asks this question. He says, wait a second. We know that the Gemara that we just mentioned in Yevamot 62 says that Kulan Metu beperek echad. All of his students died, perished, unfortunately, in this short period of time. So they didn't really cease to die, they finished to die. All of them died. So what kind of simcha is that one? If you had a remnants, some of them would not die. So you would say, okay, this day at least marks a happy occasion because the gezerah was that all should die. Hashem forgave some of them, and they didn't die. So that's happy. But when all of them perished, all of them died, says the Pri Chadash, what kind of happy moment and date is that? What are you marking exactly? So those are the questions, and the Vilna Gaon in Shulchan Aruch, he really alludes to this by saying that perhaps this question of Pri Chadash, again, it gets beyond the scope of this talk to explain the cryptic language, short few words like he always does of the Vilna Gaon, but perhaps he also alludes to this question as well. Now we have got a lot of questions. Now to make things even worse, I want to quote the Gemara exactly, almost verbatim, and show you that there's another very big problem over here. The Gemara says, what was the reason that these special people died? We're talking about great personalities that formed the spiritual reality of a nation. The biggest rabbis that you could ever imagine. Why would God punish them in this horrific way? The Gemara says, how did they die? B'mitad askra, which was perhaps the worst horrific, the most horrific and the worst way of passing on.
Skinned alive, right?
It's a form of choking, according to Rashi, is a form of not being able to breathe properly and basically choking to death gradually. And it's a horrific way. So what exactly is? And the Gemara says, you know why?
So what do you mean?
Because they were unable to respect one another properly.
It says that
They didn't respect each other.
it was sold on September
Okay,
9th.
that's bad enough.
September 9th, she's like, that's
And it's strange because Rabbi Akiva is the one that we find, he actually says, his pet peeve, what he used to always say was,
she came home.
Amar Rabbi Akiva, ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha ze klal gadol b'Torah. If you want to summarize all of the Torah in one say, ve'ahavta l're'acha kamocha, respect and love your fellow Jew like yourself. Now he's Talmidim, this is what happened to them.
It's his jewelry.
So that's the Gemara. Now the problem with this is,
What happened? It was you.
in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer
Went
and in Midrash Rabbah in Bereshit,
jacket. In order to
the Midrash and Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer seem to say a different reason for this.
they're blamed for
It's codified there that when Rabbi Akiva finally went and got another 5 students for himself,
all of those comments.
which the Torah was spread throughout the whole Klal Yisrael, throughout the nation from these 5, he told them the following. He said, please, I beg you, do not be like your other friends who died.
In order to
Shehaya enehem tzara echad b'sheni. That they had a narrow eye, if you want to literally translate it, one to another. They couldn't see each other's good.
Sure.
Right?
To rebuke.
In Yiddish and in Farsi, there's a saying for this. In Yiddish, they say, "Fargin nicht af yanem." They can't see the good. They can't tolerate that someone else is good for them. Right? That's it.
Jealousy.
It's more than jealousy. It's not being capable of being happy with someone else's good. Not necessarily that you want to be like them, but you can't see anyone that has success in life.
Even more evil than that, right?
So
Look at the level of sensitivity
this does not seem to go together with
for one another. Because
the Gemara in Yevamot that we just mentioned. The Gemara there says they couldn't respect each other. Over here, the Gemara the Midrash is saying that they couldn't see each other's good. So which one is it?
there's some classes, they listen
So I want to try to give an explanation for all the questions that we asked,
and they get it fired.
but really start with
And they see somebody do something
a personality and trait of Rabbi Akiva himself, which would really explain and shed light to why Rabbi Akiva became the giant of the Torah, why his students perished, and why his subsequent students became the successors and the progenitors of Torah for the next generation.
There's a classic expression.
Now here we go. Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says in Masechet Ketuvot, on page 62, he was totally an ignorant. He was Ben Gerim. He had not much to offer. He was the descendants of converts, and he was totally ignorant. He didn't know Aleph Bet even. At the age of 40, he was a shepherd for a fellow called Kalva Svua. He was one of the top three, and perhaps the top of the three, billionaires, multi-billionaires in the world. He was the richest man alive.
You believe that you're not going to be able to do the
And he had a daughter
enforcement towards anyone,
called Rachel.
leave it up to somebody else.
And this Rachel saw that Akiva, the ignorant,
Look at someone the wrong way.
he is a wonderful personality. Sanua Umali, the Gemara
These
says.
stories recently
She saw that he is a properly
opens the door.
conducted personality,
It's very sick.
and he's very modest.
It's the type of,
She said, I want to marry this guy.
society that we live in.
And the father,
Looking at the level of
the father of Rachel Kalbasua said, no way, it's not happening.
each and every person, right?
So she was tough, and she got married to him on condition that he's going to learn Torah
Other Yehudi
hiddenly, without the knowledge of the father.
supposed to, it gives a major effect.
So he heard,
When you see,
and he wrote her out of the will.
when you go back and
So kicked her out of the house, basically, with her chatan.
and they weren't as
So now the question is, how in the world did this ignorant person, Rabbi Akiva, become the greatest man alive?
however, they were in the
That he became the sage of all sages in Jewish nation.
not sturdy, but more
How
rough,
did it happen?
that they would be able to take
The Gemara goes on to say that they got married, they had a kid.
a little bit more.
The Midrash tells us that Rabbi Akiva started going, he didn't get any online courses hiddenly or hire a private tutor. He went to the class with the little kids learning Aleph Bet. Is this guy, big guy, with his son going together to learn Aleph Bet.
No punishment.
And when time came, Rachel sent her, said, now it's time to go to yeshiva. Ready? Ready, let's go.
In the old days, the kid was
And he went to yeshiva for 12 years.
and everything's good.
Came back with 12,000 students. He's already a leading Talmid Chacham.
He knows what to
And he overhears behind the door that the elderly gentleman is rebuking his wife, saying, why Almanut Chayud, you're sitting here like a widow, you have a husband. What kind of thing is this?
all of this.
He's left you, doesn't care. She says, if he would have been listening to me, I would have told him to stay another 12 years. So he hears this, he turns back without knocking, without saying hi, goes back for another 12 years. Comes back, now he's undisputed greatest leading figure in Jewish nation with 24,000 students. Okay, this is the story in one nutshell.
You condition yourself.
How in the world did this happen to Rabbi Akiva? What was the secret of Rabbi Akiva? You think he was the biggest genius? Obviously he was very smart. But we find in the Gemara, in Masechet Yevamot on page 16, that there were many greater people than him. There were people who actually defeated him in debates, in Torah debates.
For certain things. Some people don't.
So what was his secret?
Pay attention better.
What is Rabbi Akiva's secret?
Some things are
And if you really want to know how big he became, I want to turn your attention to another Gemara.
condition yourself.
The Gemara says in Masechet Menachot, on page 29,
Slap Yishayim,
when Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to get the Torah from Hashem,
not the right, not the.
so Moshe Rabbeinu went up for 40 days, like it says in the Torah, Ma'im lo achalti, right? I didn't eat, I didn't drink, I didn't sleep.
Jumping a little bit.
So the Gemara there says that he went up and saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu kosher kitarim leotiyot.
Just to read this last point.
Hashem is making tagim, crowns, for the letters of the Torah. Have you ever seen inside the Sefer Torah how it looks? Shin has 3 tagim, right? They have crowns. They have little lines coming out of them, many of the otiyot. So Moshe says, Mim akev al yadecha. Basically what he means is, what are you doing this for? No one is going to understand these things. I have no idea what these things are about. So Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, listen to this. This is mind-boggling. Hashem says, "Lesof la'atid lavo lesof kama dorot." In future, after many generations, there's going to be a fellow
I spoke about the idea of
called Akiva ben Yosef,
last week.
that he is going to be to darshan. He's going to explain tilim shel halachot,
Just wait a second.
countless halachot from this tagim of the Torah. He's going to understand even this tagim.
Are you ready?
And Moshe Rabbeinu tells him, show him to me. And he says, Hashem is the first time machine. Hashem shows him the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Akiva. He's sitting, he's explaining the most complicated, intricate things in the Torah. And the Gemara seems, based on Rashi, this is again, if the Gemara would not say that, I would melt before saying this. The Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu got depressed. He says, you have a person like this, and you want to give the Torah through me? Hashem said, that's not your cheshbon. That's not your jurisdiction. That's my cheshbonot. Who gets the Torah? Who gives the Torah? The Maharal mi Prague, in one of his great works called Tiferet Yisrael, in Perek Samech Gimel, in chapter 63, he actually understands this Gemara to mean that Moshe Rabbeinu, in some aspect, was inferior to Rabbi Akiva.
Is it actual?
Again, this is something that none of us can understand, and certainly I would not say that if the Maharal didn't write this, the Gemara didn't write it. This is our Rabbi Akiva. To just give you a picture, and the Gemarot are endless. You could go so many stories in the Midrash, in the Gemara, and in the Zohar about Rabbi Akiva.
What is fear? Fear, we said, is
So now, go back to our question. Who made Rabbi Akiva so great?
God is going to smite me.
He's a man of 40 years
It's not
of age,
It's rather
totally ignorant.
that people's not rather that idea.
And very soon, he becomes the leading figure in the entire nation.
God is just it's a
What is his secret?
judgment.
So I want to share with you what I think is his secret,
Looks like that. It's very
and bring
rhetorically.
some powerful stories that are mentioned within our literature to show that this is really through and through his personality.
It has nothing to do with that.
So they get married, and they have nothing.
Fear of Hashem.
The billionaire wrote them out of the will, so they're living in a stable with horses together.
It's not even
This is Akiva and Rachel together.
people. You have other people you see.
And
if you're
she is about to give birth. They have nothing there. They only have teven. They have straw.
you're going
So
to
Hashem sends Eliyahu Navi
pain and hurt them.
to come there
Realize that
and
it's possible.
knocks on the door.
It's impossible.
They open the Rabbi Akiva opens the door. He says, "My wife is giving birth,
The verse.
and we have nothing. Can I get some straw from you? That at least she should give birth on the straws."
Rather,
And Rabbi Akiva says, "Sure, fine. Take some straws, give us." And goes back to Rachel. Says, "Look, we are richer than some people.
what you're doing
Some people don't even have this straw."
is wrong. You're actually
Okay, story 1.
you have with God.
The Gemara says
For instance,
in Masechet Makot, Daf Chav Dalet, 24, at the end of Masechet Makot, a phenomenal story.
if you make a
The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva was walking with his peers, with his friends,
this is what your children act.
at the site of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. He was born right at the time of the destruction of the second temple. So they're walking and you see the Romans totally, dismantled the Beit HaMikdash. They basically turned it upside down. and they're going there. The halacha is, even nowadays, you go to Eretz Yisrael, you see the Kotel HaMa'aravi, you rip your clothing. Unless it's Shabbat. Erev Shabbat is different minhagim. You ask your local rabbi before you go to Eretz Yisrael and see the scene of Kotel HaMa'aravi, what to do and what not to do every 30 days and so on. So all of them rip their clothing and they start crying. Rabbi Akiva is standing right next to them, he's laughing. They say, Akiva, lamata sohik. Akiva, why are you laughing? So he looks at them, he says, V'atem lama atem bochim. He says, on the contrary, why are you guys crying?
Because they're arguing and screaming at each other, because they love each other.
They say, what do you mean? This is our Beit HaMikdash that was the glory of the world. And look at what's happening. Foxes are walking in it.
Because she wants to
It's destroyed.
because she cares about the kid. And
V'anachnu lo nivke. We shouldn't cry. That's the halacha. You have to cry. It says it in the halacha.
teacher that berates the kid,
What would be the answer to this? All of us sitting here.
sick teacher. And most
I want to show just the contrast of Rabbi Akiva's personality.
do that because that kid
We would all cry.
berated
Just follow them. If anything, these are his Rabbeim. These are his teachers. These are Rabbi Akiva's teachers.
That's
So he says, now,
when you look at
that's exactly why I'm laughing.
but my
And he explained. He said, look, there are two nevuot that we have. There is the nevuah from Uriah, and there is the nevuah from Zechariah.
it's not fear.
The first one is mentioned in Sefer Micha,
What are we referring to?
in chapter 3. The second one is in chapter 8 of Zechariah.
There's a,
And the pasuk says, I have two edim. Hashem tells the Jews, he says, I have two edim, Uriah and Zechariah.
it's probably it's
So Rabbi Akiva tells his friends, and his Rebbeim, his
menorah.
teachers, he says, what is the relationship between Uriah and Zechariah? No relationship. They lived in different times. They were different Nevi'im.
The days of
So he says, it must be that Hashem is comparing their Nevuah together. Now, I ask you, what was the Nevuah of Uriah? The Nevuah of Uriah is that one day you're going to come and destroy Beit HaMikdash, and they're going to turn it upside down, and there are going to be foxes walking in it.
Oh, I'm scared.
And Zechariah says there's going to be a day that Beit HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, Yerushalayim is going to be rebuilt and inhabited again, and the old man and woman are going to freely walk and sit in Yerushalayim, and it's going to be great. So says Akiva to this
Parents, why?
other Chachamim, he says, until now
That their parents are
that I didn't see this, I wouldn't know if these are going to be literal and exact to the details. But now that I see every word of Uriah to the T, to the detail, came through as if describing what we just see,
ignored and
I now know that the Nevuah of Zechariah, the positive one, is also going to be exact and is going to be positively coming through with all of its details.
ignore the subject
And that's a happy moment.
is
So you have one scenario, everyone is looking at the same thing.
to somebody else. They give the cold shoulder.
All the other people see negative.
Worse
Rabbi Akiva
than
is the positive person.
nowadays. To not
He's the one that could see and say, look, someone doesn't even have the teven, the straw that we have.
Than to comment something bad.
We're living great.
Because you expect
This is the personality of Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva was a student of a fellow called Nachum Ish Gamzu.
a friend of mine, he said
Right?
he was in
Nachum was his name,
for the LSAT.
and they called him Nachum, the man of Gamzu. Gamzu means this also, because he always used to say, Gamzu letova, this also is for good. And Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara tells us, with a little slight deviation, he had his own bumper sticker.
Words to use.
Rabbi Akiva's bumper sticker was, Kol de Avid Rachmana letav Avid. Anything that Hashem does, anything that God does is for good. Gemara gives us several examples in different places. I'll mention one in Masechet Brachot on page 60. The Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva is entering a village, he's tired, he's coming from a travel. At night he gets there
And he was serious. It
with his donkey, with his rooster that he had, and a light to guide him. And he wants to lodge, he wants to stay in this village. He goes door to door, every single person rejects him.
Indifference is
Now, you can imagine, if a regular rabbi nowadays goes and he's rejected by 5 people, forget about it. It's very difficult. And this is the leading rabbi. This is the person of highest stature. And people one after the other reject him. Every time says, Baruch Hashem, this is great. So he finishes, everyone rejects him. Can you imagine? Every single home rejects him. He says, Kol David Rachmana Letav, it's good. He gets out of the town, he goes, he sets camp outside thing, he goes on top of a tree to be safe from animals, ties his donkey, goes to sleep. Gemara says that the wind, an unusual wind came, turned off his light. He said, Gamzol L'Tova, it's good. It's frightening to be in pitch dark, without any light, without any fire, without any warmth. The cat, a type of wild cat, had the rooster, ate the rooster, and a lion ripped apart the donkey, and on all of them the Gemara says, he said, Gamzul L'Tova. Only to wake up in the morning and see that the Shodedim, the robbers came, destroyed the town, killed people, raped people, took the rest of them to captivity, and burned the village to fire.
300 girls in one
and said, called David Rachmana Letav, anything Hashem. But that hindsight is 20/20 for everyone. The difference between us and Rabbi Akiva is when the difficulty is happening. When the difficulty is happening, Rabbi Akiva was saying, Hashem is running the world. Life is good.
The same thing goes for guys as well.
See, LG was created by Rabbi Akiva first. Right? Life is great.
It's not going to be wearing.
And that's the outlook that Rabbi Akiva had on everything. Even when he was taken to be killed, the Gemara, the next page, the 61 in Brachot, the Gemara says the Romans wanted to kill him because he was teaching Torah publicly. And the day that they brought him out, they wanted to basically comb his body to death with masrekot shel barzel. They had sharpened metal combs to comb his back, his flesh, little by little until he dies. And his students were there, they were allowed to see. They were there, and he was saying, Kam lishma. And he said, Rabbeinu, our teacher, at Khan, until, how much are you obligated to be calm and composed? So what would we say? We would say, at most, we would say, well, what do you want me to do? Right? Listen to what Rabbi Akiva tells them. He says, the pasuk in Shema says, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol modecha." We say it every day 3 times. And he said, I always understood that when it says b'chol nafshecha, with all of your soul, afilu notel et nafshecha, even if Hashem takes away your life, you still have to love Him. And it says every time that I recited this pasuk, I agonized about it. Am I going to be able to have the opportunity to do this and do it successfully? When is this going to be applicable for me? And now that I have the privilege, the opportunity of actually showing my love to Hashem, I'm going to mess it up. Again, a horrific situation for everyone else. But Rabbi Akiva's lens to the world is totally different. And you want to know how Rabbi Akiva started this whole journey? You think he was always successful? Negative. The Midrash tells us, after he started going to yeshiva, right, his Rebbetzin sent him, Rachel sent him to yeshiva, he was not successful. He was not successful. So he got depressed. He went out to the forest, right? And he saw it dripping water on a rock that has penetrated the rock, making a beautiful deep hole inside this rock. So imagine to yourself a down, depressed person that's going to think to himself in the forest. What is he going to think? This is the last thing that he's going to pay attention to.